Starting a series just before weeks. I am stealing most of this from a particular book, but also a whole bunch of books. And basically, we're going through the spiritual disciplines. As we begin a new year, we want to kind of, how do we start? It's the time you go, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to, all those things I meant to do last year and didn't do, we're going to do this year. And so keep that resolution because you can probably use it next year again. And so we wanted to take the next 4 weeks and kind of work through this series. And the main book, I read a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it was I thought that's a really good book. And really, it's just a spiritual discipline. It's about the spiritual disciplines. You can't see, can you? Sorry. I have a couple books up here, and actually I have more. I didn't have time to find them all. There's so many books written about the spiritual disciplines because it's a really helpful topic. It's a very big topic. It's a very important topic, especially for Christians. And so as we begin this year, we just kind of want to work through some of these things. And so today we're going to go through a bit of a history of why we need them, what led us to the point in culture where we are. And then the next 3 weeks, we're going to look more into the actual spiritual disciplines themselves. And so I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. It's a movie with Adam Sandler called Click. Who's ever seen this movie? Right, and in the movie, he's got this magic remote thing, and he can just kind of skip ahead, and so when things are boring, he ends up rushing ahead just a little bit, then all of a sudden he finds himself kind of rushing, and all of a sudden he finds himself at almost the end of his life, and he's missed so much of life, because he thought, if I could just kind of rush ahead of this, and this is boring, and this is too slow. And of course, the whole point of the movie is, life is all of those things, right? You can't just rush through. If you rush through life, right, you actually miss life, and that's what he comes to realize at the end. I just ruined it for you. I think you get the gist. Anyway, it was an okay movie if you really want to watch it. But right, but this is part of our culture. What I liked about this movie is that this is part of our culture. We live in a hurried culture. This is part of our problem today. Because everybody says, I don't, right? You don't have to hold your hand up, or I don't have enough time. Who's everybody, right? I don't have time to do all the things I want to do. I'm tired all the time, right? That's a big thing, right? Kind of chronic tiredness. We're not doing things we want to do. And again, being busy isn't a bad thing, especially if they're good things, but we live in a culture that is hurried, right? It's not just busy, it's hurried. Everything is hurried. We're always rushing. We're always trying to catch up. And we live in a culture that is hurried, but also it kind of makes sense, because if your child is doing poorly in school, or they're not learning well, what do we call your child, right? Used to, not anymore. Right? We call them slow. Oh, your child's slow. Right? If a movie is boring, what do we say? This movie is slow, right? And when traffic is bad, it's because it's slow or not moving, right? So slow is always, there's this kind of negative thing with being slow. Right? And we live in a culture, I don't know if you've heard of hustle culture. Right? Everyone's like, you got to have a side hustle, right? You got to have your own job, then you got to have this other hustle. You got to make money. You got to always be, if you're not working, if you're not making money, what are you doing, right? And it's on the Instagrams and the TikToks, right? I'm just kidding. I know what those things are. I'm not that old. Right? But this is part of our culture. Everything is hurried. You have to do more. You have to do more. You got to figure it. You got to do all this stuff. But it didn't used to be like that, right? It used to be slow. We used to have a whole day. Remember this? Sundays? Nothing was open. I grew up in that. I lived through that change, right? And at first I was like, yay. Now I'm like, I kind of miss it. But there used to be actual rhythms to life. Again, way, way back, what determined our time? The sun. Literally, there was day and there was night. And when it was bright, you did work, and when it was dark, you went to bed. And then there was even seasons within that, right? In the summertime, it was a little lighter. You could work a little longer. In the wintertime, people hibernate, literally. Right? People I can't do what I do. And so life just slowed down. And then someone, I don't know who, but someone created the sundial, 1500 kind of BCE. And there's a guy named Plytus. And he says, he kind of in this poem, he says, Gods confound the man who hacked my day into miserable portions. Right? This is how mad he was at a sundial, because it took his day, and all of a sudden, now I can time it. Right? Think about that, a sundial. We're like, what the? He was so mad about that. I think that's great. But in the 1100s, along came the monks. And the monks would pray 7 times a day, and they were struggling to figure out, when do you do it? And sometimes they used to burn ropes and blah, blah. They created the clock. Monks, right? Religious people, right? They created these clocks. And so that was to help them. But then, 200 years later, Cologne, Germany, they created the first public clock. This was the very first public clock where it was up, at least in Europe that we know of, with our kind of white ethnocentric history. There could have been clocks elsewhere, we don't know. But the one that we know was Cologne, Germany. Right? And now everybody ran by what? The clock. It wasn't the sun, it wasn't nature. Who now ran your time, right? It was your employer because they knew when it was 9 and they knew when it was 5. Everybody knew. You were no longer in control. And then a guy named Edison who stole everything he ever did, but at some point he stole the light bulb, right? 1879. And what did that change? That changed everything because now sun and dark didn't matter. It could be light all the time. It could be light all the time. And I had to double check this because I read this stat. What do you think the average amount of sleep we used to get before the light bulb? What do you think it was? 11 hours. People used to sleep on average 11 hours. What are the averages now? It's 7. The average is 7, and doctors say you should get 8, right? So we're not even close. It used to be 11 hours, right? So start smashing your light bulbs. This is it. Right? We're going back. We're going back. And in this life of hurry, in this culture of hurry, right, no one's really happy. No one's really peaceful. No one's really joyful. Like, when you're hurried and you're trying to get your kids out the door, how happy, joyful, and peaceful are you? Right? Right? The fruit of the Spirit is not oozing out of you when you're in a rush. Right? And this is just part of life. But this is the culture that we live in. And again, it's not about it being bad or good. It's about what do we do with these things. And in Matthew 11, which we're going to kind of look at a little bit today, what does Jesus say? He says, come all you who are weary. Are you weary, he says? Come and find some rest, he says. Are you heavy laden? He goes, come and take my yoke from my burden is light, he says. Hurry is the opposite of the life of Jesus, right? A guy named Dallas Willard, he said, hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life. Corrie ten Boom, know who that is. Corrie ten Boom said, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Right? Says the results are the same, right? If he can't make you sin, he'll make you busy, because in the busyness, in the hurriedness, we kind of lose this time for God. We lose the ability to kind of focus on God. And Carl Jung, who was not even a Christian, he was a disciple of the other guy, not Nietzsche, the other one. Freud, right? He says, again, this is not a Christian. He says, hurry is not of the devil, hurry is the devil, right? Hurry is not of the devil. This is just a psychologist. This is a guy who just recognized these people are talking like 100 years ago. They're not talking about today. These people are long dead. And already back in the culture, long before cell phones and internet and everything, fast, they already were like, whoa, culture's way too fast 100 years ago. This is crazy. Because, again, hurry is still a bit of it's kind of a mark of success in our culture, right? Fear of missing out, that's a big thing, right? You don't want to miss out. You got to do everything. And then YOLO, right? You only live once, right? So you got to do everything now. You only live once. But a guy named Walter Adams, this guy was a spiritual mentor to C.S. Lewis, and he says, to walk with Jesus is to walk with a slow, unhurried pace. He says, hurry is the death of prayer, and it only impedes and spoils our work. He says, hurry never advances it. Hurry will never advance our work. It will only impede and spoil. Again, he was older than C.S. Lewis. He was the mentor to C.S. Lewis. And so again, another 100 years ago. Again, busy is okay. Busy is kind of normal, and as long as they're good things that we're doing, but it's this hurry, this sense of hurry. And some hurry is good. Your wife's water breaks, hurry, right? Like, that's good. If there's a fire, hurry, right? Like, that's not all bad. But again, we live not in these moments of emergency. This is something that's become just normal for us all the time. And so I did not know this also. I Googled this, and it is true. Slot machines. We're going to put one in the church after this stat. Just kidding. Slot machines. They make more money than baseball and the film industry combined. Never would have guessed that, right? It's roughly the same. A little more. It's roughly the same. Right? It's like 15 billion, 25, and then slot machines is about $35 billion, just in America alone, by the way. That's just America. 35, and they say, what is it? It's because it's a little bit at a time. Put a quarter at a time, you don't think about it. $80 to go see a baseball game, a few quarters. Turns out those few quarters with a little bit, right? A little bit becomes a lot. And in our world today, this little bit of hurry and a little bit of hurry, it begins to add up. And these little moments of hurry ends up taking up of our life. And here's the thing about our world, I don't know if you know this, but everybody who owns a company is out to get you, right? They do not care about you, sorry to tell you this, but they do care about your money, they do care about your time, because they want both. They want both. We live in a world which is literally designed to distract you, right? And to addict you to that distraction. This is the world that we live in. And again, it's designed this way. So on average, you might know these things, right? Phones, how many times a day do you think you open your phone? 150 times, right? On average. How many times do you touch your phone? Not open them, but touch them. It's 2,700 times. iPhone users, it's higher, right? I'm not making this up. And that means everything from liking a post to sending to typing. 2,700 times a day you touch your phone, you open it 150 times. And at the same time, they say it takes almost an average of 20 minutes to refocus after you've opened your phone. So at 150 times a day times 20 minutes, right, you have no time left. You have no focused time left. And like we said, the world is designed to distract you. And not just to distract you, but to get your attention, because the only way that people make money is off your attention. They need your attention to make money. They only get rich if they can get your attention. And every single app you've ever owned, every single company, they have people on the back end. They are psychologists, they're designers. They know what to do. They know what to do. Super Bowl commercials, why do they cost so much money to run a Super Bowl commercial? Because there's so much attention on the Super Bowl. There's so much attention. They go, we're going to have so much attention, it's worth it to us. Pop-up ads, YouTube suggestions, billboards. I'm going to throw up that next one there, Jordan. You've probably seen this place, right? Everybody's trying to get your attention. So you've got to be bigger, brighter, louder, whatever it is, because the only way I make money is if I get your attention. So I'm going to start swearing in sermons to get your... No, I'm not going to. Right? Big sign outside, neon, glowing sign, whatever. We just need... No. But this is how life works. Because here's the thing. What we give our attention to is also what we give our devotion to. Right? And culture, they know that. They're very smart. They know that. They know if they can get you devoted to them and to their product and to their company, they're going to make they're going to take your money. And they know they will. And so this is what they're working on. Because what has our attention, what what distracts us, what gets our attention, it also gets our hearts and it gets our minds. And this is how it works, right? This is how it works. And I know I pick on phones. With the youth, we're starting a thing on spiritual disciplines as well, which I planned long before this series. And we talked about phones this week, right? And I had everybody put their phones in the middle, and one girl couldn't do it. She actually went and sat at the back. She was like, no, I can't do it. I'm like, we're talking about you. This is what we're talking about, right? No, I wasn't. But we need to become aware of these things. Because what are they doing? They're making us unhappy. They're making us tired. They're making us unjoyful, unpeaceful, and unhappy. And in the midst of all this attention and all of this distraction and everybody fighting for us, Jesus is also there. Jesus is also there calling for our attention. Jesus is also there calling for our time. And literally he has to, in the Proverbs, it always talks about wisdom, right? Lady wisdom, right? And this is God speaking, and he says, does not raise their voice. They just stand at the end of the street and they don't shout, but they just speak. But if the noise of life and the noise of the street drowns it out, we'll never hear. But Lady Wisdom, God is always there speaking to us. And so when Jesus says, come to me and find rest, he also says over and over, come and follow me. What is he saying? Right? And this one pastor, John Mark Comer, he likes the idea of apprenticeship. He says, Jesus is not just saying, come follow me. He says, come and be my apprentice. And what is an apprenticeship? You learn. You literally watch. How does this guy do this? How does this person do this? And then I do the same thing. And when Jesus says, come and take my yoke, come and learn from me, he's saying, come and be my apprentice, which means watch me. Don't watch that and that and that and that and that and that and that. Watch me. And as you watch me, you will learn from me. And so as we follow Jesus and as we learn from Jesus, two things we need to remember. One is that in Genesis, we are created in the image of God, which means we have what? Great potential. We are created in the image of God. We have great potential. We are also created from dust, which means we have massive limitations. We have massive limitations. Our physical bodies, we can only do so much, right? Some you can do more than others, but we have limitations with our physical bodies. We have limitations with our minds. Some people learn a lot. Some people have higher IQs than others. We are limited by our own minds. I don't care what movies or drugs you can take, right? Oh, you can no, you can't. Right? Your skills and abilities, you have certain skills and abilities. They will limit you. I cannot be an astronaut because I don't want to be. It's the only reason why. No, I could never be. There are certain things I could not do. It is not me. It's not in me to do. Sometimes even our socioeconomic status, where we're born, all of these things, it limits us. Some of these things we can move beyond, but some of these things, even seasons in life, when you're a new parent, you're probably not climbing Mount Everest at the same time. Right? You're probably not doing those things. When you retire, it's a different kind of life. When you're in college, it's a different kind of life. When we have different seasons of life, which limit us and what we can do. And as part of being, Christians especially, but as part of being human is to learn our limitations. And I know the world says you can do anything, nothing is impossible, right? That's a load of garbage, right? There's a bank. You're richer than you think. No, you're not. Nothing is impossible. Tons of things are impossible for you. So many things are impossible. You will never do them. Learn to you all suck is what I'm trying to say. No, we need to learn as humans that we cannot do anything, right? Adidas, thank you for trying, but no, your shoes will not allow me to do certain things. And the greatest thing that limits us is what? It's time. Time limits everybody. Rich, poor, does not matter. We have lifespans. We don't know what that is. And there's a great limit for all of us, right? And there's two great, I'll call them pastors. One is Paul and one is Gandalf. They both say the same thing. And I have it for you, right? All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us, right? And that's Gandalf. Paul says the same thing. He goes, make wise use of your time. Be wise in how you use your time. You only have so much time, and you actually don't know how much time you have. And so be wise in how you do this. And so as we're kind of, if we try and learn to live this unhurried life, we have to be aware of our limitations, absolutely. Right? I don't need to chase all these things. If that's not who I am, don't do it. But we're limited with our time, and our limitations in our time, these things limit us. And because of this time, quick question for you. If you wanted to read 200 books a year, that'd be awesome. I'd love to read that many books. How many hours do you think it takes to read 200 books a year? 417. 417 hours, roughly, you could read 200 books a year. How many hours a year, on average, do we spend on social media, just social media? What do you think it is? 700, right? How much do you think we spend on TV? What do you think it is? It's 2,700, right? So we're looking at roughly 3,500 hours. It only takes 400, just over 400 to read 200 books. In 10 minutes a day, if you took 10 minutes of your day and you could read roughly 10 pages a day. That's 3,650 pages a year. That's roughly 11 novels a year, or the Bible 3 times through. You pick. I won't tell you which one. No, right? That's 10 minutes. That is literally just 10 minutes. And the point of that is not, do you all have to read? Maybe you hate reading. It's not the point. It's that in 10 minutes a day, what you can do with that. If you take 10 minutes, we go, I don't have time to read. Yeah, you do. It's 10 minutes a day. We all have 10 minutes. I can think of something you do every day that's probably more than 10 minutes. You could read while you're there, right? It's breakfast. What are you guys thinking? Right? As you're eating breakfast, you guys are weird. Oh, gross. Huh? In 10 minutes, in 5 minutes a day, think of this, 5 minutes a day, that's a lot of time. Because you could pray for every single family and friend member you have. For 5 minutes, just take 5 minutes. Say, I need to spend more time in prayer. 5 minutes is actually not, it's a hard time to pray. I mean, honestly, to try and pray straight for 5 minutes without your mind going every which way is kind of hard. But the point of that is not to tell you what to do with your time, is that we have time. We actually do have time. It's what we decide to do with that time. And what Jesus says is, as we're going to walk down this road, I need you to come to me. And I need you to, if you're weary, if you need to find rest, I need you to learn from me, to be my apprentice. And what he means is I need you not just to kind of enjoy and like and subscribe to me. I want you to actually do as I do. I want you to live this life, because Jesus lives this unhurried life. He does. He really does. If you read his life. And again, when he says, take my yoke, what is a yoke, right? A yoke is this, it's this thing. And we'll get to that in a second. But as he calls us to be, he says, come, learn from me. He says, be like me, do the things that I do, and do the things that I would do if I were you. This is what it means. And again, I'm going to read the same passage in Matthew. This is from the Message, and it's up on the screen. It says, are you tired? I like the way Eugene Peterson says this. He says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? He says, come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how you take a real rest. Come with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. And learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't be laying anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Right? This is the way of Jesus. This is the way of Jesus. He doesn't offer us theology, just a set of beliefs. He doesn't offer us ethics and morals and just some random set of rules. He offers us a way of life. He offers us a lifestyle. He says, come learn, understand the way that I live, then let this encompass all that you do. And if you do this, he says, then we'll... And there's a guy named Fred Bruner, and what he says is, he says, Jesus doesn't say, come, and I'm going to give you a mattress to take a nap on, to take a break from your life so you can go back. He doesn't offer us an Airbnb vacation cottage. Come, take a weekend away, and then go back to it. He says, no. When he offers us a yoke, do you know what a yoke is? Or I'll show you a picture of a yoke here, right? You know what a yoke is. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? It goes with the cows. You get two together. You work together. When he says, take a yoke, he's not saying, come find a break, come find a vacation. He goes, I'm going to show you a whole new way to work. He goes, come and work with me. What we like him to say is come take a break, but he says come and learn a new way to work. Come and learn a whole new way to live, and I'm on this side and you're on this side, and we're going to do this together. It's not a break, it's not a vacation. It's an entire new way of taking what? Of taking the burden, because with a yoke, there's a burden. They got to pull something. And when you share it, you can pull so much more because you share this burden. It says, come and learn how to carry these burdens together. Come learn how to carry these burdens together, because he says you can't get out of this life and you can't just escape to the woods. Few of us try. They're on TikTok. You can see their life, right? People do try. They got to get away from it. But Jesus says you can't really get away from it. So maybe let's learn something new. Let's try something new. And the life of Jesus, when we work with Jesus, we will discover that he goes very slowly. Remember Jairus' daughter? He's like, my daughter's dying. Come with me real quick. And on the way, he stops, what? To heal this woman, to chat with her, to talk with her. Right? Ask Jairus' daughter if Jesus is slow. Right? The dad's probably like, let's go. What in the world? Remember Lazarus, Mary, and Martha? They're like, Lazarus is dying. Can you get here? Jesus takes a couple more days. And then he gets there, and what do they say? If you had only what? Hurried up. If you had only been here. Imagine yelling at Jesus, why are you so slow? Huh? This is who Jesus is. Jesus is all right. He doesn't rush through his life. He is always present with the people that are there in front of him. This is who he is. He was busy, but it's not hurried. Right? Now the difference is he connected with those people. He was connected with God, and he was connected with the people around him. This is the kind of life that he lived, right? And again, he did what he had to do. The disciples wake up and they freak out. Where's Jesus? Well, he just went off. He had to be by himself for a bit. He had to connect with God. And then when he came back, he connected with people. And this is who he is. He slept at weird moments, right? Jesus kept sleeping at weird moments. Like, why are you sleeping in the boat? I'm very tired. Right? I'm very tired. You got to come and save us. He's like, again? Right? This is who Jesus is. And when Jesus, what did he do? What did Jesus spend most of his life doing? I mean, teaching about the kingdom of God, but also he ate a lot of meals with people. He ate a lot of meals with people, and not really like the people he was supposed to, the people he wanted to. People who he found joy in eating with them. This was his life. Everyone's like, you should do this, and you should do this. He's like, I'm going to sit down and eat. Eat with them, I'll eat with them, have another party with these guys. This is the life of Jesus. And again, there's more to this, and we're going to work through these things. How does Jesus do this? And again, those monks who ruined everything with their clocks, they also create something called a rule, right? And a rule it's based on a word for a piece of wood, straight piece of wood, like a ruler. And it's not like a ruler. The idea is it's something sturdy of which I can build upon. They had a rule for their life, and this rule was a system that they had to intentionally build to create a life of unhurriedness. The monks said, if we don't do this, if we don't intentionally build a life like this, we'll get taken this way and this way and this way and this way. And so they built these practices. And so that same word, right? And so I'm not going to ask you if you like wine. I'll just assume that you do. But to get a good wine, you have to start with what? There's a lot of things. But before the grapes, you have to start with the thing that builds it up, right? This thing, you call it a trellis, you call it whatever you want. And there's a great picture if you go to the next picture, right? Like if you build a really good trellis, right? You build a good, sturdy one. The thing that holds everything together. If you build a good one, how many years before you get wine? It's 4 to 8 years, depending on the wine. So you have to build this thing knowing that 3 years, they just grow. In the 3rd to 4th year, you get the fruit. And then depending on what kind of wine it is, it takes another, from year 4 to year 8 before you finally get wine. When they're building this structure, they're building these new structures, they're not planning for 6 months or a year. They're planning for 8 years down the road. But I have to build this well if I want to get good wine at the end. If I want a good result down the road, I need to build something now, this system, this trellis, this rule, this thing that will support this life. So and so for them it's that, because what do they want? They want good wine. But for us, what do we want? We want a life where we actually have time, and not just to ourselves, but we want that too, but an unhurried life where we can take time with Jesus. Because number one thing people, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for this. We have time for these things. We need to build them in intentionally. We need to build them in intentionally. I don't have time yet. No, I have time. There's too many things. Got to start cutting things out. Like any relationship. If your wife said to you, hey, can we spend time together? And you said, I don't have time. How long will they be your wife? Right? Not very long. Imagine you're dating. Hey, can we hang out on dating? I like you. I don't have time. Right? That'll be very short-lived. Friendships, anything, right? Going to work, go, hey, can you do this? I don't have time, right? It's going to be a very short-lived job. That's how relationships work. For a relationship to work, you have to put in time. And not time where I'm on my phone, and again, there's a problem with, we always talk about this problem with dating and stuff is, not that I'm dating, but like in general, right? When you see people on dates, is what I'm getting. I'm going to get myself in trouble here, right? But people see that, they go, well, what is the problem? Well, this affects our relationship with God. When we say, even in the time, I don't have time for you, that's a big problem. But even in the time I have, is it distracted? Is it hurried? Is it rushed? And again, in our life, our culture, it's just this way. So how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we do this? Right? Because what does Jesus invite us to? When he invites us to walk with him, he says, come to me, follow me, be my apprentice. He says, take my yoke. That's a relationship. He says, come and walk with me. Come and work with me. Come and be in step with me. That is a relationship. And the only way we're going to get to that point, if say, I want to have a deeper relationship with God, I want to, spend more time in prayer, I want to read the Bible more, then Jesus says, okay, what are you going to build? How are you going to do this? So look down the road. Again, we got asked to do this in seminary. They said, look down the road at your own eulogy at your funeral. What do you want people to say about you? Well, you better start doing now what gets you to that point. Start living now in the way that you want people to know who you are and how you lived your life. Because Jesus invites us into relationship to be yoked with him. So what do we do? So what is our homework? Again, we're going to, the next few weeks, we're going to look at the spiritual disciplines. Not all of them, but just the ones that help us slow down. The ones that help us deliberately enter into relationship with God in a more undistracted, slowed down, unhurried pace. The things that will really help us kind of achieve those things, hopefully. And hopefully it is worthwhile. Because you have to ask yourself, I don't really care. I'm not going to worry about it. That is an answer. Right? That is an answer. When Jesus says, come to me, you don't have to. You don't have. When he says, take my yoke upon you, it's easy. You don't have to. You go, no, I got my own yoke. Yeah, it's not great, but I'm going to stick. You totally can. You totally can. So if you're not here the next 3 weeks, I know you're, no, I'm just kidding. We're not going to keep track. But the hope is in the next 3 weeks that when you come, you say, that is the life I want. That is the kind of relationship that I want to be. I want to learn to live this kind of way. So this is our homework this week as we come into next week before we things, is to actually try and consciously look at your life this week. The good thing is about your phones is it'll tell you. I don't know if you know this. It's horrifying sometimes. You can actually find out. It keeps track for you because it keeps track of everything you do and say and look at and eat. But it'll keep track of everything. It'll keep track of how much time you spent on all these things, how much time you spent distracted, how much time you spent paying attention to other things. I want you this week to look at your own life and say, what is the rhythms of my life? What are the rhythms of my life? And so when we come into the next 3 weeks, as we look at some of these things which will help us, we can say, okay, because when we're distracted and when we're kind of everywhere, we're not really aware of ourselves. If we're not aware of ourselves, we won't be aware of God. And so this next week, I want you to become aware of your time. Become aware of the rhythms of your day, the rhythms of your week. And as we become aware of that, then we can take these practices, these spiritual disciplines, and we can work them into our lives, right? But it starts with being aware, right? Again, of our own limitations, but also our rhythms, our patterns. So that's your homework for this week. Maybe you're really good at this. Maybe you already pay attention to these things. You are a better person than I am. And so, and again, all this stuff. And this is not like, I don't want this ever to be like a guilt-heavy thing, like you're doing poorly. No, this is an invitation of Jesus. Jesus doesn't say you have to do this. He says, do you want to do this? I would like you to come and join me. Would you be willing to? And so we're going to spend the next 3 weeks looking at these things, working through these things, but it's all based on this when Jesus says, come to me. If you are weary, if you say, yes, I'm weary, I want you to be here the next 3 weeks, right? Are you tired? Do you feel like life is a heavy burden? Then I encourage you to be here because Jesus is going to show us and walk us through some of these ways. And so and the very last one, again, just this last picture, again, this reminder, look carefully then how you walk, because we're going to do this week not as unwise, but as wise. We don't have all the time in the world. So how are we using the time and the life that we have to build and live this kind of life that we want? In all sorts of ways, for emotional health, for our psychological health, for our physical health, but especially our spiritual health. These things all go together. They're not separate things. And so we want to take time and build all of this together. And so I do hope you come back as we, again, to look down these spiritual disciplines. But we're close in prayer, and then we're going to come to our time of communion. And again, our time of communion is such a wonderful thing because what is it doing? It's literally taking time. And I remember as a kid, I hated communion Sundays. They took so long, literally. It was like an extra half hour. You're like, no, it's so slow. But that's the joy of it, is it forces you to slow down, right? And you're thinking, I got to get home because there's football and I've got lunch and all of these things. But what we're going to do, and we're getting close to the end of the time, and I'm going to make it go super long today. No, I'm not. But before we go back out into there, before we go back out into the rush of probably our day is already pretty packed, and our week is certainly already packed. Before we do, what we want to do is we want to stop, and we just want to sit quietly, and we want to reflect on who God is, right? On why we even want to have a relationship with God. Why do we have a relationship with God? Well, because He loves us. That's the greatest thing. He loves us. How do we know He loves us? Well, because He gave His life for us. That's how we know He loves us. We also know He loves us because He says, not only have I given my life for you, but actually I'm going to give you my Holy Spirit, and also in the life after this life, I've got a whole new home for you, and it's going to be pretty amazing. In fact, I've got a whole new creation for you, and that's where I want you to be. I want you to come and join me in this life and take my yoke, but I also want you to be with me in the life after this life. And this is why we want to take the time to get to know Him. And so we want to take some time this morning, and we're just going to pause, and we're going to reflect as we begin our week and whatever comes our way this week. We just want to slow down and say thank you, and we want to center ourselves. And so as we hit all the things we're going to hit this week, because we don't know what's going to happen this week, but as we do these things, take that moment and reflect on what we're about to do as we just say thank you, Lord Jesus, for you going to the cross, you giving your life, and the hope and the joy of what your resurrection means for us. Your kingdom is here in this world. Your kingdom will be fulfilled one day. We get to be a part of that right here, right now. What does that kingdom look like? We're going to work through the next couple of weeks. We want to start that with just a time of reflection and a time of waiting. A time of waiting. So let's pray and say, Lord.